Thank you very much, Tom. And there is a lot of interest in our program. Just to share with you, we actually have 97 online participants, including our panelists. And that still doesn't include all of us who are here in person in Suwon. So now is the time for us to answer your questions. And please continue to send your questions in the Q&A box if you're joining us over Zoom. Or if you're here in person, the floor is also open for questions. I'll just start the ball rolling by reading one of the questions that were sent over Zoom in the Q&A box. First question, good morning. Thank you for this initiative. If we want easy wins for increasing air quality investments, where do you think are the low-hanging fruits that projects should focus on? Is the first question. And a second part to that question is, as follow-up, what institutional interventions are key to ensure long-term impact? May I ask Tom to answer the first part, and please hand over to Ben for the second part of the question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Glenda. So the first question, in terms of low-hanging fruit, it's a bit of a tricky one, low-hanging fruit, because I think it can perhaps send us down the wrong path. A central component of what we're trying to do here is provide evidence-based solutions. So a key aspect of the Asia Clean Blue Sky program is ensuring that we have the greatest understanding of what these projects are likely to do in terms of air quality impact, and then consider all potential options for maximizing that impact, whilst also considering associated socioeconomic impacts from those solutions. Often, some of these, I suppose, the low-hanging fruit, as you might term them, are things that you might not even think of before you've actually carried out that evidence assessment, before you've done the emissions inventory development, before you've modeled the impact of some of your scenarios. So I think that's the really exciting part of this program, is it provides the opportunity to do a bit of a deep dive into some of these projects and hopefully gain a better understanding of where those opportunities are to take forward. But I would say, I don't know if I'd term this low-hanging fruit, because there is the need for that evidence base beforehand, and hopefully that's where we can come in.
Thanks, Tom. I guess the only thing to add on the low-hanging fruit is really about how do we actually make the most of investments that are already happening. So particularly there's a lot of work, a lot of investment going into climate change related projects, energy related projects. So actually for me, the low-hanging fruit are making sure that we maximize the benefits for air quality of these actions that are already being taken. So it's very much the sort of drawing on those synergies and opportunities between the two. So I think the second part of the question, and actually I'll take it alongside another question that's come in, around what institutional interventions are required to ensure longer term impacts. So we've very much been focusing on discussing about specific projects, investments, etc. so far, but I think we don't want to lose sight of the fact that there is also scope within the program to support wider policy development and implementation. And I think to ensure longer term impacts, clearly we need to make sure that some of the countries that are being supported have the right regulatory frameworks in place to ensure that there are actually wider benefits, wider push and investments to improving air quality. So that's everything from the air quality standards that are in place, ensuring that we can actually track performance and progress against those, but also sector specific standards and controls, whether that's controls on industrial emissions and facilities, or the transport standards that are applied. So there is scope to do that, and ADB has good history from doing that in other countries. For example, in the PRC in China, there's been a policy-based loan again to support the implementation and development of those policies. So I think that's absolutely critical for the longer term impacts. I think then the other part, which is very much a core part of the program that we're discussing here today, is capacity building. So it's all very well to have great standards and regulations in place, but if they're not implemented and enforced, then let's be honest, it's not going to do anything. So it's a waste of resources. So I think we've seen some really good opportunities and actual impacts happening already through projects where that capacity building support is provided. So rather than you just have a bunch of experts that go away and develop a policy and hand it back to you, actually that's being developed hand in hand with the local, regional and national governments. And so the 7 Cities project you keep hearing about is developing clean air action plans for 7 cities across 5 countries. It's not about us just developing those action plans. We're actually developing those hand in hand with the necessary authorities, the right stakeholders, to ensure that actually once that's handed over, once that's finished, the TA, it can continue and be implemented going forward. The second question I alluded to was about how local governments could benefit from the program. And I think it pretty much is the same answer in terms of the things I've just said around capacity building. The cities project that we're working on is very much working with local government, with city authorities, as well as regional and national authorities. And I think that's where, again, there can be great benefits to ensure that they have the expertise, not just from a regulatory perspective, but Tom mentioned about, say, to develop an emissions inventory or how to do air quality modeling. And this is all part of handing over that, that knowledge and ensuring that it's left in the right hands to be able to take it forward. And then finally, for local governments, of course, it's about supporting the identification and implementation of specific projects. So working with the regional and national governments. So I think that hopefully has answered the questions. But again, please send any further in that we'll try and pick up as we go, or we'll pick up after the session.
Thank you very much, Ben and Tom. We have another question, and this one I addressed to Karma. How can we participate in the program if we have upcoming projects?
Thank you, Glenda. Is this on? So if anyone has upcoming projects which are related to air quality management, and this could be, I don't know, it could be a regional level program or it could be a specific project in a country, please let us know. There are ways for us to partner. Like I said, we are looking to tap into, it could be your technical expertise where, for example, we know the Institute for Global Environmental Studies, IGES, they are very experts in the field of quantifying co-benefits of greenhouse gas emission reductions and air pollution reduction. So if there is something like that, or if there is a particular program which you have anyway as part of your organizations and you already have an established network with member countries and member countries are participating to either voluntarily or on a mandatory basis fulfill certain commitments, then we would also like to take advantage of existence of such programs so that we can support the governments to meet their commitments. So there are a series of different ways in which you can participate. And it really depends on the context. It could be regional level, or it could be even national government level, or even local city level. And as mentioned by Ben, it could be in the way of capacity building activity where we work together to build the capacity of the government agency. It could be in terms of improving the data collection and presentation of data to the policymakers so they can formulate sound policies, or it could also be in the area of bringing in specific technical interventions at a project level. For example, like what Tom had presented, the example of introducing electric or clean energy based heating in Mongolia, and shifting from coal fire to renewable energy based heating. So there are many different ways.
Thank you, Karma. While you have the microphone, there is another question for you. Kindly explain more what you mean in your criteria of advanced low carbon technology.
Yes, this is, I guess, linked to what I had just mentioned earlier. So that is one example, the example from Erdenet. It could be anything which basically is a new technology which results in reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and air pollution. And this is really context specific. So, for example, the word innovation, especially innovative. So it could be innovative in one country, but perhaps in another country, it's not innovative because it's very, that technology is easily and widely available. But it could be considered as innovative. So when we are bringing in, I don't know, new technology from Japan or from Korea, bringing it to some parts of South Asia, and it could be considered as advanced in South Asia. So it's really context specific. But the main thing is there should be a resulting reduction in greenhouse gas emissions and air pollution.
Thank you, Karma. We have 4 more questions, and for the first 2, I'd like to request Ben to respond to these 2 questions that are related. Are you also working on airsheds as a management unit instead of cities? Would an airshed approach be practical? And related to that, what are the key challenges in convincing our developing member countries to apply this concept of clean air or improving air quality?
Thanks, Glinda. So just in terms of the first question, asking about airsheds as a management unit instead of cities, I think just to be clear, we have no fixed approach to this. It's very much dependent upon what the emphasis is of the work and where it makes most sense. So some of the work has looked at it from an airshed approach in terms of some of the cities work previously. But remembering that actually for the 7 Cities project, we are very much trying to give the cities a clean air action plan that they can implement. And obviously cities only have control over a certain portion of their emissions and the air quality that results from it. So it's trying to ensure that they can actually take action and have an impact, whilst also not forgetting that clearly there are wider sources within the airshed and other policies at, say, a regional and national level that are important. So we're not forgetting that part, and that's very much been part of, say, some of the engagement at a higher sort of level with regional and national government authorities. So I think, just to be clear, it's very flexible, I think, in terms of how we approach it, and I think it's what makes most sense, but also keeping in mind the end goal of what we're trying to influence and impact on. I think the second question is a really good one around key challenges in convincing our DMCs to apply the concept of air quality and improve air quality. I think what we see more and more nowadays is actually that they don't have much choice. I think the people demand to see air quality improvements. I think we're seeing much better understanding of air quality and the impacts it can have. But clearly it's not the same everywhere, and so to ensure that they take action does require work. I think through some of the work we've been doing on clean air action plans, the stakeholder engagement and communication part is absolutely core to the whole plan running through that. So how do we communicate both air quality and its impacts, but also why certain actions are needed to get on board? And I think that in turn is obviously driving further actions by the DMCs. I think the other thing, of course, is that money talks. So for the DMCs themselves, with the Clean Sky, Asia Clean Blue Skies program, we're looking at how we can identify and implement investment projects that would have an air quality benefit. So clearly there's also an incentive within this to ensure that countries are taking action and looking for projects to be able to take forward.
Hi, thank you so much, Ben. I'd like to request Tom to answer these 3 related questions on the components of the program. So one question is whether the design will include increasing awareness in the countries, because without this awareness of people, then the investments may not yield the results hoped for. And second, whether capacity building is a focus as well of key stakeholders like consultants, contractors, suppliers, and manufacturers. And lastly, in relation to technology transfer, will the program facilitate systematic tech transfer between countries or cities, like north-south transfer or south-south transfer between cities?
Thank you, Glinda. I will do my best to remember those 3 questions. Yeah, thank you. So the first question, increasing awareness. I think this is a central component of the Clean Blue Sky program, and it has been during the preparatory phase. As we heard about from Ben and Glinda's presentation, there was a big focus on knowledge sharing events. So we held 3 knowledge sharing events during the preparatory phase. And that was about bringing together stakeholders and explaining some of the core principles relating to air quality and the assessment of air quality and associated impacts and potential technology solutions. So the intention is to continue that going forward. We also have the information pills, which were mentioned, and I would encourage you to check out the link that was shared, which are these sort of small packages of information relating to some key aspects around the program. And then going forward, there's going to be a real focus on working with local teams and providing support to the different groups of stakeholders depending on what they need, whether that's the city teams and ensuring that they have the capacity necessary to take forward these projects and that they're familiar with the technologies that are being considered, whether it's wider stakeholder groups to provide that transparency and involvement and buy-in to the projects that we're working with. So yes, I think overall it's going to be a central component of the program going forward.
Thank you so much. And that brings us to the end of our Q&A, but our panelists our speakers are going